Commander Veltar stood in the command center of the Zephyrian High Council, staring at the massive screen that showed his dying world. Zephyros Prime, the planet he had called home for over 200 years, was tearing itself apart. Giant. Cracks split the ground like broken glass. Mountains crumbled into dust. The ocean boiled and steamed as the planet's core grew hotter and more unstable with each passing hour. How much time do we have left? Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Carolyn looked up from her instruments, her blue-scaled face pale with exhaustion. She had not slept in 3 days, working desperately to find some solution to their impossible problem. 71 hours and 43 minutes, she said quietly. Maybe less if the gravitational distortions get worse. Veltar closed his eyes and felt the weight of 2.8 billion lives pressing down on him. Every Zephyrian on the planet was counting on the High Council to save them. But how could they save anyone when their world was dying from the inside out? The problem had started 6 months ago when mining crews discovered something buried deep in the planet's crust. It looked like a machine, but not one built by any known civilization. The device was ancient, older than recorded history, and covered in symbols that no one could read. The miners should have left it alone, but they were curious. They activated it by accident while trying to study it. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But within days, the planet's core began to change. The gravitational field that held everything together started to break down. The ancient machine was pulling energy from the planet's center, creating wild gravitational storms that ripped apart everything they touched. Dr. Carolyn had spent months trying to understand the device. She discovered it was some kind of weapon, built by a race that had died out millions of years ago. But knowing what it was did not help her stop it. The machine was too advanced, too alien. Every attempt to shut it down only made things worse. "The evacuation ships are ready," reported General Toxrun from across the room. "We can save 400,000 people, maybe 500,000 if we pack them in tight." Veltar felt sick. 500,000 out of nearly 3 billion. It was not even close to enough. And the others? General Toxrun could not meet his eyes. "The others will have to stay." The command center fell silent except for the constant hum of computers and the distant rumble of earthquakes shaking the building. Veltar had been a commander for 50 years. He had fought in wars, survived natural disasters, and led his people through many crises, but this was different. "This was the end of everything. What about the other worlds?" asked Dr. Carolyn. "Have any of them responded to our distress calls?" Veltar walked to his communication station and pulled up the responses they had received. The list was long but disappointing. The Altarians had offered to take 10,000 refugees. The Centauri Coalition could accept 20,000. The Vegan Republic promised food and medical supplies but had no ships to spare. The Andromedans sent sympathy but claimed they were too far away to help. Every response was the same. Polite words, small offers of help, but nothing that could save more than a tiny fraction of their people. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, with powerful technology, but none of them could or would do what was needed to save Zephyros Prime. "There is one more option," Dr. Carolyn said slowly. "What option?" Veltar asked. "The humans." General Toxrun made a noise that sounded like laughter, but there was no humor in it. "The humans? They barely know how to leave their own star system. What could they possibly do that the Altarians or the vegans cannot?" Dr. Carolyn pulled up a file on her computer. "I've been studying their recent activities. They are primitive, yes, but they have something the other races do not." "What is that?" "They are unpredictable. Every other civilization in the galaxy follows logical patterns. They calculate costs and benefits. They make decisions based on what is best for themselves. But humans... She paused, searching for the right words. "Humans do things that make no sense. They risk their lives for strangers. They fight impossible battles. They refuse to give up even when logic says they should." Veltar shook his head. "That sounds like madness, not helpfulness. Maybe, but what do we have to lose?" "We have contacted every major power in the galaxy. None of them can help us. The humans might not be able to help either, but at least they might try something unexpected. General Toxrin crossed his arms. Even if we contact them, they will never receive the message in time. Their fastest ships take weeks to cross interstellar distances. By the time they get our transmission, Zephyros Prime will be gone. Not necessarily, Dr. Carolyn said. They have deep space communication arrays, quantum entanglement networks. If we send our message to their monitoring stations, they will receive it instantly. Veltar considered this. The humans were known throughout the galaxy, though not for good reasons. Most civilizations considered them young, violent, and dangerous. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, but they had already been involved in 3 wars with other species. They solved problems with brute force rather than careful planning. They were emotional and unpredictable, but Dr. Carolyn was right about one thing. They had nothing left to lose. Very well, Veltar said. Compose a message to the humans. Make it clear that we are not asking for much. We know they cannot save everyone. But if they could take even a few thousand refugees, it would be something. Dr. Carolyn began typing on her computer. Should I mention the gravitational weapon? They might be able to suggest something we have not thought of, if you want. But do not get your hopes up. If the Altarians and the vegans cannot solve this problem, the humans certainly cannot. As Dr. Carolyn worked on the message, Veltar returned to the main screen. Another earthquake shook the building, stronger than the last one. Through the window he could see fires burning in the distance where a gravitational storm had torn through a city. Soon, there would be nowhere left to run. The message was finished within an hour. It was simple and direct, explaining their situation and asking for whatever help the humans could provide. Dr. Carolyn attached all their scientific data about the ancient weapon, though she doubted the humans would understand any of it. Message sent, she announced. Now they could only wait. In 70 hours, Zephyros Prime would be destroyed. The evacuation ships would save a few 100,000 people, but millions would die. Unless someone somewhere could perform a miracle, Veltar did not believe in miracles. But as he watched his world tear itself apart, he found himself hoping that the humans might prove him wrong. On the other side of the galaxy, at a human monitoring station orbiting Earth's moon, communications specialist Jake Morrison was finishing his night shift when the alien transmission arrived. The computers immediately began working to translate the message, but Jake could tell from the signal patterns that something was very wrong. This was not a normal diplomatic communication. This was a cry for help. As the translation completed, and Jake read the message, his face went pale. He reached for his emergency communication device and began sending alerts to every important person he could think of. The humans had just received their first interstellar distress call. And Jake Morrison had a feeling that everything was about to change. Jake Morrison stared at his computer screen, reading the alien message for the 3rd time. His hands shook as he reached for the red emergency phone that connected directly to Earth's Global Defense Council. The phone rang only once before someone answered. This is Admiral Rick Carson. What is the emergency? Sir, this is Communications Specialist Morrison at Luna Station. We have received an alien distress call. A planet called Zephyros Prime is going to be destroyed in 70 hours. They are asking for help. There was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment. Are you certain this is real? Yes, sir. The message includes scientific data and star charts. Our computers have verified the source. This is genuine. Forward everything to my office immediately. I will wake the president. Jake sent the files, and then sat back in his chair, wondering what would happen next. In all his years working at the Deep Space Monitoring Station, he had never received a message like this. Earth had been contacted by other alien species before, but those had been simple diplomatic communications. This was different. This was life and death. Within 2 hours, President Linda Hayes was sitting in the emergency briefing room, deep beneath the White House. Around the table sat the most important people in Earth's government: Admiral Carson, Defense Secretary Bob Miller, Chief Science Advisor Dr. Lisa Shun, and a dozen other officials. Admiral Carson stood at the front of the room next to a large display screen showing the alien message. "The situation is simple," he said. "An alien civilization is facing extinction. Their planet will be destroyed in less than 3 days. They have 2.8 billion people and can only evacuate 500,000. What exactly are they asking us to do?" asked President Hayes. "They are asking for refugee assistance. They want us to take some of their people." Secretary Miller leaned forward. "How many people are we talking about?" "They do not specify. But even if we used every ship in our fleet, we could only take maybe 50,000 people. It would be a drop in the ocean." Dr. Chun was studying the scientific data on her tablet. "This is fascinating," she said quietly. "The weapon destroying their planet is some kind of gravitational manipulator. It is pulling energy from the planet's core and creating massive distortions in space-time. Can we do anything about it?" asked the president. Dr. Chun shook her head. "Not with our current technology. This is far beyond anything we understand." The room fell quiet as everyone considered the situation. Earth's space fleet was small compared to other galactic civilizations. Humanity had only 12 interstellar ships, and most of them were designed for exploration, not rescue operations. The largest ship, the UES Pathfinder, could carry maybe 5,000 people if they packed them in tight. "So our options are limited," President Hayes said. "We can offer to take a few thousand refugees, but we cannot save the planet itself." "That appears to be correct," Admiral Carson replied. Then Captain Sam Rodriguez, who had been sitting quietly at the end of the table, spoke up. "What if we are thinking about this wrong?" Everyone turned to look at him. Rodriguez was the captain of the Pathfinder and one of Earth's most experienced space explorers. He had spent more time in deep space than almost anyone else in the room. "What do you mean?" asked the president. "Everyone else is telling these aliens that they cannot help. The Altarians, the vegans, all the big civilizations. They are all saying the same thing. Sorry, but this is impossible." "But what if it is not impossible? What if everyone else is just not trying hard enough?" Secretary Miller frowned. "Captain, we have looked at the data. This weapon is beyond our understanding. How can we succeed where more advanced civilizations have failed?" Rodriguez stood up and walked to the display screen. "Maybe because we approach problems differently. Look at what happened when the Koreans invaded Earth's shipping lanes 10 years ago. Every expert said we could not stop them because their ships were faster and better armed. But we won anyway because we did something they did not expect. That was a military conflict," Admiral Carson said. "This is a natural disaster. Is it though?" Rodriguez pointed at the data on the screen. "This weapon was built by someone. It has an activation sequence, power sources, control mechanisms. If it was built, it can be stopped." Dr. Chun looked up from her tablet with sudden interest. "Actually, he might be right. I have been analyzing the gravitational patterns, and there is something odd about them. The distortions are not random. They follow a specific pattern, almost like a frequency." "What does that mean?" asked President Hayes. "It means the weapon might be vulnerable to interference. If we could generate the right kind of counter-frequency, we might be able to disrupt it." "But that would require enormous amounts of energy," Secretary Miller said. "And perfect timing. And we would need to get close to the planet to do it," Rodriguez smiled. "So we need to think like humans, not like aliens." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the president's communications officer burst into the room. "Ma'am, you need to see this. The alien message has leaked to the media. The whole world knows about it." President Hayes closed her eyes and sighed. "How bad is it?" "It is spreading everywhere. Social media, news networks, radio stations." Reporter: "Amy Brooks broke the story on the Global News Network 20 minutes ago." On the main screen, they could see Amy Brooks standing in front of the White House, speaking to a camera. "This is the most important story in human history," she was saying. "For the first time, another species has asked us for help. How we respond will define who we are as a people." The president looked around the room. "Well, that changes things. We cannot keep this quiet anymore?" Over the next 6 hours, something extraordinary happened. As news of the alien crisis spread around the world, the human response was unlike anything anyone had expected. Instead of panic or fear, people responded with determination and compassion. Volunteer recruitment. Centers in major cities were overwhelmed with people wanting to help. Engineers called in to work offering to modify ships for rescue operations. Scientists around the world began studying the alien data, looking for solutions that more advanced civilizations had missed. At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez found himself leading a team of 300 volunteers who had shown up to help retrofit spacecraft. "We need to strip out everything non-essential," he told his team. "Furniture, entertainment systems, decorative panels. Every pound we save is another person we can rescue." Similar scenes played out around the world. In Moscow, retired astronaut Helen Burke came out of retirement to pilot a supply ship. In Tokyo, engineers worked around the clock to modify cargo vessels for life support. In London, medical teams prepared emergency supplies for alien refugees they knew nothing about, but the most surprising development came from the private sector. Tech billionaire Steve Parker, who owned a fleet of experimental spacecraft, announced that he was donating his entire fleet to the rescue mission. "Money means nothing if we lose our humanity," he said in a televised statement. Back at the White House, President Hayes watched the global response with amazement. "I have never seen anything like this," she said to Admiral Carson. "It is like the entire world has united behind this mission." "The question is whether we can actually do anything meaningful," Carson replied. "Public support is wonderful, but we still have the same technical limitations." Dr. Chun, who had been working nonstop on the gravitational data, suddenly looked up with excitement. "I think I found something. The weapon is not just one device. It is a network of 17 smaller devices positioned around the planet's core. They work together to create the gravitational distortions." "What does that mean for us?" asked Rodriguez. "It means we might be able to stop it. If we could generate counter-gravitational pulses at the right frequencies and aim them at all 17 devices simultaneously, we could disrupt the network." "That sounds incredibly complex," Admiral Carson said. "It is. It would require 17 ships positioned at precise coordinates around the planet. Each ship would need to fire at exactly the same moment with exactly the right frequency. The margin for error would be almost zero." Secretary Miller shook his head. "That is impossible. We do not have 17 ships capable of that kind of precision." "Actually," Rodriguez said slowly, "we might. If we count the civilian vessels that have volunteered, plus the experimental ships from Parker Industries, plus our own fleet, we have exactly 17 ships that could potentially do this." President Hayes looked around the room. "Are you saying we could actually save their planet? Not just rescue a few thousand people, but save all 2.8 billion of them?" "It would be the most dangerous and complex operation in human history," Dr. Chun said. "One mistake and we could lose everything. But yes, I think it might be possible." The room fell silent as everyone considered what they were discussing. No other species in the galaxy had even attempted to save Zephyros Prime. Most had dismissed it as impossible. But here were humans, a species most aliens considered primitive, planning to do exactly that. "There is one more thing," Rodriguez said. "The aliens are monitoring our communications. They can see what we are planning." "What do you think they are thinking right now?" asked President Hayes. Rodriguez smiled. "Probably that we are completely insane." With less than 60 hours left before Zephyros Prime would be destroyed, Earth looked like a world at war. But instead of preparing for battle, humanity was preparing for the greatest rescue mission in galactic history. At shipyards around the world, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez supervised teams working around the clock to modify every available spacecraft. The job seemed impossible. They needed to turn exploration ships, cargo vessels, and experimental craft into precision instruments capable of generating gravitational counterpulses. "We need these modifications done in 50 hours, Martinez told his exhausted team at the Kennedy Space Center. I know it normally takes months to retrofit a ship like this, but we do not have months. We have 2 days. The work was unlike anything they had ever attempted. Each ship needed new gravitational pulse generators, upgraded power systems, and navigation computers accurate enough to position the vessels within meters of their targets. The equipment was so new that most of it was still experimental. Dr. Lisa Chun worked with teams of physicists around the world, calculating the exact frequencies and power levels needed for each ship. The mathematics were incredibly complex. A single error in the calculations could cause the entire mission to fail. The gravitational pulses have to hit all 17 target points at exactly the same moment, she explained to Captain Rodriguez. During a video conference, we are talking about precision measured in microseconds. Even light-speed delays between ships could throw off the timing. Rodriguez studied the numbers on his screen. What about using quantum entanglement for communication? That would eliminate the delay. We are already working on it. But we have never tried to synchronize 17 different quantum transmitters before. This is all untested technology. Meanwhile, the human fleet was taking shape. The UES Pathfinder would serve as the command ship. 6 military vessels would provide the primary gravitational pulse generators. Steve Parker had contributed 5 experimental ships with advanced navigation systems. 3 converted cargo ships would handle the most dangerous positions near the planet's gravitational storms. 2 research vessels would monitor the planet's core during the operation. But what amazed the watching aliens was not just the ships themselves, but the people volunteering to crew them. Retired pilots came out of retirement. Engineers left their families to join the mission. Scientists abandoned research projects that had taken years to develop. Helen Burke, who had not flown in space for 15 years, spent 18 hours straight learning to operate a converted mining ship. The controls are completely different from what I am used to, she told her training instructor, but I will figure it out. Jenny Williams, a civilian pilot who normally flew cargo runs between Earth and Mars, volunteered to take one of the most dangerous positions. Her ship would need to operate within the gravitational anomalies surrounding Zephyros Prime, where one mistake could tear her vessel apart. Are you sure about this? Asked the mission coordinator. You have a family, kids? Jenny nodded. That is exactly why I have to do this? Those aliens have families too. Kids too. If we do not help them, who will? The Zephyrians monitoring human communications could not understand what they were seeing. In their experience, space missions took months or years of careful planning. Safety protocols required extensive testing of all equipment. No sane civilization would attempt something this dangerous with so little preparation, Commander Veltar called an emergency meeting of the High Council. I do not understand these humans, he said. They are planning an operation that could destroy their entire fleet. Why would they take such a risk for strangers? Dr. Carolyn had been studying human behavior patterns for the past 2 days. I think they are driven by something we do not have, she said. What is that? Hope. We have accepted that our world is going to die. We are focused on saving who we can. But the humans refuse to accept that anything is impossible. They believe. They can save everyone? General Toxrin shook his head. That is not hope. That is madness. Their plan has so many ways it could fail. The timing has to be perfect. The calculations have to be exact. The ships have to hold together under enormous stress. Any one of 100 things could go wrong. You are right, Carolyn agreed. By any logical analysis, their plan should fail. But humans do not always follow logic. As if to prove her point, news arrived that made the situation even more impossible. The gravitational distortions around Zephyros Prime were getting stronger. The safe approach routes that Dr. Chun had calculated were no longer safe. The human ships would have to navigate through gravitational storms that could crush them instantly. Any reasonable civilization would have called off the mission. The Zephyrians expected the humans to announce that the risks were too great. Instead, they did something that shocked everyone watching. Captain Rodriguez called a meeting of all ship commanders. The video conference included pilots and engineers from around the world, all of whom were risking their lives for the mission. "We have a problem," Rodriguez began. "The gravitational storms are worse than we expected. The approach is going to be more dangerous than we planned." There was silence on the communication channel for a moment. Then Jenny Williams spoke up. "So what is the new plan?" "We can still do this, but it will require flying closer to the gravitational anomalies. The risk of losing ships is much higher." "How much higher?" asked Helen Burke. Dr. Chun answered from her laboratory on Earth. "Our models suggest we might lose up to 30% of the fleet, maybe more." Another silence. Then Steve Parker, the billionaire who had donated his experimental ships, laughed. "Well, I did not donate those ships so they could sit in a museum. If we are going to lose them, let us lose them doing something worthwhile." One by one, every commander confirmed they were still committed to the mission. Not a single person backed out, even though they now knew the odds were against them. The Zephyrians were speechless. Commander Veltar had fought in 3 wars and commanded military units for decades, but he had never seen anything like this. Soldiers might follow orders into dangerous situations, but these were mostly civilians. They were volunteering to risk their lives for people they had never met. "There is something else," Dr. Carolyn said quietly. "I have been analyzing their technical modifications. The humans are not just copying our technology. They are improving it." She brought up a display showing the gravitational pulse generators the humans were installing on their ships. "Look at these power coupling designs. They are 20% more efficient than our standard models. And these navigation systems, they are more accurate than anything we have." General Toxin stared at the display. "How is that possible?" "They have only had this technology for 2 days. I think it is because they are not limited by our assumptions. We design technology based on what we know is possible. But humans design technology based on what they need it to do." With 36 hours remaining, the human fleet began departing from Earth. The ships looked strange. Hastily modified vessels covered with new equipment and painted with identification numbers. They did not look like the sleek, carefully designed ships of other galactic civilizations. They looked like exactly what they were, a desperate rescue fleet built in 2 days by people who refused to give up. As the ships began their journey to Zephyros Prime, Captain Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian High Council. It was the first direct conversation between the two species. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Human Rescue Fleet. We are on our way." Veltar struggled to find words. "Captain Rodriguez, I must ask, why are you doing this? Your people could be killed. Your ships could be destroyed. You will gain nothing from this mission." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. "Commander, you said in your message that you were sending a final plea. But it was not final, it was a beginning. You reached out to us because you needed help. That is all we needed to know. But the risks, there are always risks. But some things are worth any risk. Saving 2.8 billion lives is one of those things." The communication ended, leaving the Zephyrian command center in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization was being challenged by this young, supposedly primitive species. As the human fleet traveled through space toward their dying world, the Zephyrians began to realize that they were about to witness something unprecedented. Not just a rescue mission, but a demonstration of what it meant to be human. Dr. Carolyn summed up what everyone was thinking. "I do not know if they will succeed. But I am beginning to understand why every other species in the galaxy is afraid of them. It is not because they are violent or dangerous. It is because they make the impossible seem possible." Commander Veltar watched the human ships approaching on his display screen. In 36 hours, they would either witness the greatest rescue in galactic history or the most spectacular failure. But either way, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The countdown continued. 35 hours until Zephyros Prime would be destroyed, and 17 human ships were racing across space to prove that sometimes the impossible was just another word for untried. The human fleet arrived at Zephyros Prime with only 18 hours left before the planet would tear itself apart. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder and watched through the main screen as the dying world came into view. It was worse than any of them had imagined. Massive cracks split the planet's surface like wounds that would never heal. Entire continents were breaking apart and floating away from each other. The oceans boiled and steamed as underground heat escaped through the broken crust. Gravitational storms twisted through space around the planet, looking like invisible tornadoes that could crush a spaceship in seconds. "My God," whispered Navigator Dan Foster, staring at the destruction. "How is anyone still alive down there?" Through the communication system, they could hear the voices of Zephyrian evacuation ships hovering near the planet. The alien pilots sounded exhausted and hopeless as they reported their status to their command centers. "Evacuation Ship 7 reporting. We have taken on maximum passengers. Departing for safety zone. Evacuation Ship 12 requesting assistance. Our engines are failing due to gravitational interference. This is Evacuation Ship 3. We cannot reach the southern continent. The gravitational storms are too strong." Dr. Chun's voice came through the communication system from Earth. "Captain Rodriguez, I am seeing the sensor readings from your ships. The gravitational distortions are worse than our models predicted. The safe approach routes we calculated are gone." Rodriguez studied the tactical display showing the positions his ships needed to reach. Each ship had to place itself at a specific point around the planet where they could target one of the 17 devices causing the destruction. But getting to those positions meant flying through gravitational storms that could tear apart their hastily modified vessels. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. You can see the situation. It is worse than we planned. If anyone wants to turn back, now is the time." The communication channel was quiet for a moment. Then Jenny Williams responded from her converted mining ship. "Captain, I did not come this far to turn around now. Just tell me where you need me." One by one, every ship commander confirmed they were ready to proceed. Helen Burke, flying her converted research vessel, actually laughed. "I am 72 years old. If I die doing something this important, that is not a bad way to go." The Zephyrian High Council was monitoring human communications, and they could not believe what they were hearing. Commander Veltar called his communication officer. "Are the humans really planning to fly into those gravitational storms?" "Yes, sir. They are beginning their approach now." "This is suicide. Those storms will destroy them." Dr. Carolyn was studying the human fleet movements on her instruments. "Commander, look at their formation. They are not flying randomly into the storms. They are using some kind of coordinated pattern." She was right. As the human ships approached the planet, they moved in a careful dance around the gravitational anomalies. When one ship encountered a storm too powerful to navigate, another ship would adjust its position to create a safe corridor. When gravitational forces threatened to pull a vessel off course, nearby ships would coordinate their movements to provide stability. "How are they doing this?" asked General Toxrin. "This level of coordination should be impossible without years of training." The answer came from an unexpected source. Chief Engineer Martinez, working frantically in the engine room of one of the cargo ships, was talking to his counterpart on another vessel. "Tony, I'm getting gravitational readings that do not match our charts. Can you confirm?" "Confirmed, Martinez. The distortion field is shifting, but I think I can compensate if we adjust our approach vector by 15 degrees. That will put you dangerously close to that storm system." "I know. But if Helen can provide a gravitational anchor from her position, I think we can make it work." "Helen." Burke's voice joined the conversation. "I can do it. But someone needs to watch my back. That storm is moving toward my position." Jenny Williams responded immediately. "I got you covered, Helen. Adjusting my course now." The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the human ships worked together like parts of a single organism. When one ship faced a problem, the others immediately adapted to help. When equipment failed, crews found creative solutions using whatever they had available. When the carefully planned approach routes became impossible, The humans simply created new ones on the spot. This should not work, Dr. Carolyn said quietly. They are making tactical decisions faster than our computers can process the variables. How can they coordinate this precisely without a central command system? Commander Veltar was beginning to understand something about humans that no other species had realized. They are not following a plan, he said. They are creating the plan as they go. Each ship is thinking independently, but they are all working toward the same goal. As the human ships moved into their final positions, the technical challenges became even more difficult. The gravitational pulse generators had to be calibrated exactly right, and the calculations were changing constantly as the planet's death throes shifted the gravitational fields. Dr. Chun was working with teams of scientists on Earth, recalculating the firing solutions in real time. All ships, this is Chun, the gravitational frequencies are shifting. I am sending you updated targeting data. Carol Reed, the science officer aboard the Pathfinder, was adapting the calculations as fast as she received them. The changes are happening too quickly. By the time we calculate a solution, the conditions have changed again. Then we improvise, said Rodriguez. Carol, what is your best estimate for the targeting solution? Based on current data, I would say we have a 60% chance of success if we fire in the next 10 minutes. And if we wait for more accurate data? The conditions will keep changing. We might get better data, or we might get worse data. There is no way to know. Rodriguez made the decision that would determine the fate of 2.8 billion Zephyrians. Oh. Ships, prepare to fire on my command. We go with the current calculations. The 17 human ships moved into their final positions. Some were so close to gravitational storms that their hulls groaned under the stress. Others hung in space near gravitational anomalies that could crush them if they moved a few meters in the wrong direction. Jenny Williams was positioned closer to the planet's surface than anyone else, her mining ship surrounded by twisting gravitational fields. This is Williams. I am getting massive structural stress readings. I do not know how long the ship can hold together. How long do you need? Asked Rodriguez. Give me 5 minutes to get into exact position. After that, this ship is going to come apart whether we fire or not. Helen Burke was having her own problems. Her research vessel was older than the others, and the gravitational stresses were causing system failures throughout the ship. I am losing power to the pulse generator. Don, can you reroute power from life support? Engineer Don Foster was crawling through access tunnels, rewiring systems by hand. Done, but we will only have enough power for one shot. One shot is all we need. Similar conversations were happening on ships throughout the fleet. Equipment was failing, hulls were cracking, and systems were being pushed far beyond their design limits. But somehow the humans kept finding ways to make things work. The Zephyrians could only watch in stunned silence as the impossible mission continued to move forward. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong, but the humans refused to give up. All ships report ready, came the final confirmation from each vessel. Rodriguez looked at the tactical display one last time. 17 ships, positioned around a dying planet, preparing to fire weapons that had been built in 2 days using technology they barely understood. The margin for error was essentially zero. If even one ship fired at the wrong time or with the wrong frequency, the entire mission would fail. This is Rodriguez to all ships. We came here because 2.8 billion people needed help. That has not changed. On my mark, all ships fire simultaneously. 3, 2, 1, mark. 17 gravitational pulse generators fired at exactly the same moment, sending invisible waves of energy toward the ancient devices buried in Zephyros Prime. For a few seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the planet's gravitational field began to change. The wild storms that had been tearing the world apart started to weaken. The massive cracks in the surface stopped growing. The boiling oceans began to calm, but the most amazing thing was not what happened to the planet. It was what the Zephyrians realized about the humans who had saved them. These supposedly primitive people had Just accomplish something that every advanced civilization in the galaxy had declared impossible. And they had done it not through superior technology or careful planning, but through something much more powerful. They had done it by refusing to accept that failure was an option. The 17 gravitational pulses struck their targets with perfect precision. Deep beneath the surface of Zephyros Prime, the ancient devices that had been killing the planet suddenly went silent. The network of gravitational manipulators that had been tearing apart the world's core lost its power and collapsed. For the first few minutes, everyone held their breath. The massive gravitational storms that had been raging around the planet began to weaken and fade away. The terrible cracking sounds that had echoed across continents for months finally stopped. The boiling oceans started to cool and calm. "It worked," whispered Dr. Chun from her laboratory on Earth, watching the sensor readings in disbelief. "The gravitational field is stabilizing. The planet is healing itself." On the surface of Zephyros Prime, Zephyrian civilians who had been preparing to die watched in amazement as their world came back to life. The giant cracks in the ground slowly began to close. Mountains that had been crumbling stood firm again. The sky, which had been filled with dust and steam for months, began to clear. Commander Veltar stood in the Zephyrian command center, staring at the displays that showed his world returning to normal. For the first time in months, the emergency alarms were silent. The evacuation warnings had stopped. The countdown to destruction had ended. "Status report," he said quietly to his staff, still hardly believing what had happened. "All gravitational anomalies are dissipating," reported Dr. Carolyn. "Seismic activity is decreasing rapidly. Atmospheric pressure is normalizing. Commander, I think we are going to be okay." General Toxron was monitoring communications from across the planet. "Evacuation centers are reporting that the emergency is over. People are coming out of the shelters. The cities are safe." Veltar closed his eyes and felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had been carrying for months. 2.8 billion Zephyrians were alive. Their world was saved. And it was all because of a species that most of the galaxy considered young and primitive. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Commander Veltar. I do not have words to express our gratitude. You have saved our entire civilization." Rodriguez's voice came back tired but happy. "We are glad we could help, Commander. How are your people doing?" "They are alive because of you, all of them. Every single person on this planet owes their life to you and your crews." There was a pause, and then Rodriguez said something that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "Commander, we did not come here for gratitude. We came here because it was the right thing to do." Zephyrian High Council gathered to discuss how they could possibly repay the humans for what they had done. They were a wealthy civilization with advanced technology and vast resources. Surely there was something they could offer these remarkable people who had risked everything to save strangers. "We could share our gravitational manipulation technology," suggested Dr. Carolyn. "It is far more advanced than anything they currently have, or we could provide them with our star charts," added General Toxron. "Our navigation data covers half the galaxy." "What about raw materials?" suggested another council member. "We have mining rights in 17 star systems. We could offer them exclusive access." Commander Veltar contacted Captain Rodriguez with their offers. "Captain, we want to reward you and your people for what you have done. We can offer you technology, resources, territory, whatever you need." The response shocked every Zephyrian listening to the conversation. "That is very generous, Commander, but we do not want payment. We did not come here to gain something for ourselves." "But you must accept something," Veltar insisted. "You saved our entire world. You risked your lives, your ships, everything. How can we not reward such sacrifice?" "Commander, the fact that your people are alive is reward enough. We do not need anything else." Dr. Carolyn, who had been studying human behavior for days, spoke up. "Captain Rodriguez, may I ask you something? In our experience, every species in the galaxy acts for their own benefit. Even when they help others, they expect something in return. Why are humans different? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed obvious to him but apparently made no sense to anyone else in the galaxy. Dr. Kirillin, imagine you saw a child drowning in a river. Would you jump in to save them? Of course. Would you ask for payment first? Would you negotiate what the child's parents would give you in return? No, that would be ridiculous. You would save the child because they needed help? Exactly. That is how we see this situation. You needed help, we were able to provide it. That is all there is to it. The Zephyrian High Council sat in stunned silence. In all their centuries of contact with other civilizations, they had never encountered anything like this. The humans had performed the greatest rescue in galactic history, and they genuinely did not want anything in return. But the impact of the human response went far beyond just saving Zephyros Prime. Word of what had happened spread throughout the galaxy within days. Every major civilization received reports of how humans had accomplished something that everyone else had declared impossible. The Altarian High Command called an emergency session to analyze the human rescue operation. How did they succeed? Where we failed? Demanded the Altarian Supreme Leader. They approached the problem differently, replied their chief scientist. We calculated the odds and determined the mission was impossible. The humans ignored the odds and found a way to make it work anyway. The Vegan Republic held similar discussions. The humans used inferior technology and had minimal preparation time, observed their military leader. By every logical analysis, they should have failed. Perhaps logic is not the only factor in success, suggested their science advisor. Perhaps determination and willingness to sacrifice for others matter more than we realized. Similar conversations were happening in government centers throughout the galaxy. The human rescue of Zephyros Prime had challenged every assumption about how civilizations were supposed to behave, but the most profound impact was on individual people throughout the galaxy who heard the story. For the first time, many aliens began to wonder if there might be more to existence than just looking out for yourself and your own species. On the trade world of Nexus Station, alien merchants who had heard about the rescue began donating supplies to refugee camps, something that had never happened before. On the research planet of Academia 7, scientists started sharing their discoveries freely instead of hoarding them for profit. Dr. Kirillin spent weeks writing a detailed report about the human rescue operation. Her conclusion would become one of the most quoted documents in galactic history. We have always believed that advanced civilization meant superior technology, logical decision-making, and efficient resource management. The humans have shown us that true advancement might mean something completely different. It might mean being willing to risk everything for others, even when those others cannot offer anything in return. Commander Veltar decided that the galaxy needed to hear the full story of what the humans had done. He composed a message that was broadcast to every known civilization. We sent what we believed was our final plea to the humans, expecting at best a small gesture of sympathy. Instead, they showed us something we had forgotten in our centuries of civilization. They showed us that the greatest strength comes not from technology or resources, but from the simple decision to help others, because they need help. The humans did not save us because they expected reward or recognition. They saved us because they could not stand by and watch 2.8 billion people die. In doing so, they reminded us all what it truly means to be civilized. We called them primitive. We called them young. We called them dangerous. We never called them what they truly are, the conscience of the galaxy. The message ended with a simple statement that would change how every species viewed humanity. If this is what humans consider normal behavior, then perhaps the rest of us have much to learn about what it means to be truly advanced. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Captain Rodriguez received one final message from Commander Veltar. Captain, you asked for nothing in return for saving our world. But please accept this one thing. You have our eternal friendship. If humanity ever needs help, Zephyros Prime will answer. Rodriguez smiled as he read the message. Thank you, Commander. But we hope you never have to. The human ships turned toward home, leaving behind a saved world and a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. They had not set out to change galactic civilization. They had simply done what humans do: help others who need help. But sometimes, doing the right thing changes everything.